This episode is brought to you by Rainbow Sports Group. The Rainbow Sports Group are a leading football infrastructure platform looking to discover and nurture the best young African talent. They not only provide academies to develop the football talent, but also provide high school programs and mentoring of the pressures and pitfalls of professional football from former top pros still embedded in the game. Rainbow's infrastructure allows players to be placed in a global football ecosystem with the full support throughout their career. For more information, visit rainbow-sports.com.
This is the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show. I'm Glenn Hoddle.
Welcome to the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show. Episodes are released on Sunday evenings, and we hope you'll join us every week. On today's podcast, Glenn, who is on the phone to us this week, will talk us through the best of the weekend footy action, where once again there were a shed load of goals. We also look back at the England-Denmark game and speak to a man who is helping young African footballers realise their dreams. But first, as always, let's look back to the weekend's action.
Here are the headlines.
West Ham made an amazing comeback at Tottenham, having been 3-0 down after just 16 minutes, to leave with a point in a dramatic 3-3 draw. Lanzini scoring the equaliser in injury time. Everton stay top of the league after a 2-2 draw in a Merseyside derby, where VAR was a major talking point. Manchester United scored 4 at Newcastle, and local rivals Manchester City beat Arsenal 1-0. There was also a 1-0 win for Aston Villa, who have now won all 4 of their games. Sheffield United Fulham, Palace Brighton and Chelsea Southampton all ended in score draws. Well, Glenn, I know you're out and about and have to join us by phone this week, but thanks for doing that here on episode 6 of the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show. Only one place to start, really. What a terrific game that was at Tottenham, and what a revival in the second half from West Ham.
Well, I'm still in shock now, to be honest. It was the first half. Spurs, were a far better team. You find themselves 3-0 up, but they were playing some wonderful football. They had a lot of time and space to play in, and they totally controlled the game. And you're looking at Son and Kane, 2 world-class players, and you've got Bale waiting in the wings on the bench to come on. And, as Spurs fan, you're excited. You're just thinking, when's the next goal going to turn up? But it just shows you the old saying in football, a game of 2 halves. Tottenham went searching for the 4th goal as well. Didn't come. But you've got to give a lot of praise to West Ham, the character that they've shown. And they've shown this year. They didn't start the season very well against at home to Newcastle, lost. Everyone was questioning them, thinking, are they going to suffer this year again? Yet they showed great courage and character, beating Wolves well, and then going to Leicester and winning 3-0 away. So they've got plenty of character about them, and David Moore's got a team that's really believing in the manager and the staff, and they're putting a fantastic performance to turn it round second half. I mean, yes, you can say Spurs let things slip, and it's very un-Jose Mourinho-like, I've got to say, but that's football as it is at the moment in this Premier League. It's so different. There's so many goals going in left, right and centre. But Mourinho of yesteryear, there's no way a team of his would have let a 3-goal slip.
No. And
it's a concern to Jose and a concern to Tottenham, and so late in the game that they turned it round. That's the concern for me. 3 goals in the last 10 minutes. You can lose 3 goals over half a match or 60 minutes, but it was an incredible spell of play from West Ham, and they did well to get back into it, and they deserved it in the end. And what a goal! Lanzini's goal was incredible. To finish the game on that note was just incredible, and West Ham must be buzzing in the fact it must have felt like a win to them, being 3-0 down at half time and being beaten quite stringently, I've got to say. And it looked like Spurs were going to coast home, but they showed so much character. We did see Bale come on, And he had his one moment where he dribbled through, and you think, this was going to be written in the stars for Bale's return, and he did well to get in where he was, but from where he was, I was expecting him to score, if I'm honest. And he could have placed it either side, and he just couldn't quite keep his balance and put it in the bottom corner. So that was the real moment where every Spurs fan was thinking this is written in the stars, but it wasn't to be. And West Ham, as I say, created the 3 chances, and my word, that last goal against Lanzini was as good as to grace any game anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. Now, taking you back in time and putting your shin pads back on, what's the mentality of the Spurs players when they come out for the second half and you're 3-0 up? What is your mentality as a player? Do you sort of think, well, this is easy, we're going to coast home? Or, how can they not come out the second half and do half the stuff they did in the first?
To be honest, it wasn't quite like that. Sometimes you come out and the team start to change and they start to play and they push you back and back and back, and then there's a chance, and then there's another chance goes by. It wasn't a game where West Ham did that. Tottenham still actually had chances in that game. They still had enough possession in the game. I didn't feel sitting there. I thought West Ham came out with more intent. Of course, they're 3-0 down. They're throwing caution to the wind. They're throwing bodies forward, which in the end you drop off. It's natural that if there's 6 players being thrown up and they're taking risks, you do drop off as a team. Every team does it. But I didn't feel that. I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh my word, there's a goal here, and once they get a goal, this could turn. I felt very comfortable as a Spurs fan watching this. West Ham were coming at Tottenham, but they weren't creating chance after chance, which sometimes happens. But the fact that the goals were scored in a 10-minute spell, and it left Tottenham reeling. They couldn't come back at them again. The goal was so late, the equaliser was so late, that in the end, if Spurs had had another 5-10 minutes to come back, who knows? They might have ended up still winning the game. But that chance wasn't there. So players, their mentality didn't change that much. I think, when the second goal in, that was the key moment. That was when West Ham really had belief that they could actually get something from this game. And it was up to them, to Tottenham, to really steady the ship and try and see the game out. But how can you justify a super strike like that from Lanzini? They dealt with the cross. Kane headed the ball out. You felt as if that was West Ham's last chance. And yet it's fallen to Lanzini on the edge of the box. And, the rest is history now. In the very, very top corner. What a fabulous goal. So I didn't sit there thinking, Spurs have took their foot off the pedal. It was just something that happens in football, and it's happening this year. Some of the games and the goals and the turnarounds and the scorelines are quite incredible. They really are, like never before.
Now, a lot of Spurs fans, they're worried. They want to know what you think about what they can do about the defence, because that was always the weakest link for them this season. They've got a great forward line, and probably none better in the Premier League going forward. But how are they going to solve the defence? That's Jose Mourinho's famed for 1-0 victories. It doesn't look like that's going to happen too often.
No, I don't think it is, and I think it is a concern for many clubs, not just Tottenham. I think Chelsea have that problem. I think, look at Liverpool now. They've lost Van Dijk. City are vulnerable. Most teams are vulnerable defensively. It's not just Tottenham, but I think, as I said, I don't think it was a day where we looked, poor defensively. We were coping with a lot of balls that were being played in. It wasn't like they were carving chance after chance. So even defensively there, I don't think we were poor today. I just think sometimes this just happens, and the momentum went West Ham's way, and we've got to take, we've got to say that West Ham need to take a lot of credit for showing the character, turning this game round. And West Ham fans out there have seen the resilience that West Ham are showing this year, and that's encouraging for them.
Well, we'll talk about Chelsea's defence in a few minutes, but we should mention the great game at Goodison Park, Saturday lunchtime. Everton, Liverpool. You mentioned Van Dijk is out. Massive decisions here with VAR as well, which we'll come to. But losing Van Dijk for possibly the season, I think you said he's going to have an operation to me before we came on air. That's a big blow for them, isn't it?
It is. It's a massive blow, and it's one that I'm not sure whether they can fill it. Can they go the rest of the season with Gomez and Matip? I think Fabinho will have to slide back in there at times and play as a centre-back. He's done it for Liverpool already. He did it for Monaco well, but it's not ideal. I think the ironic thing is that Liverpool now find themselves under a bit of pressure, unfortunately for the young, the centre-back. We want him to get back as soon as he can. He's a great player, but he's going to be a massive loss. And plus, don't forget, the big change for Liverpool was when they went out and bought Alisson, the goalkeeper, and they bought Van Dijk. They needed to strengthen defensively. A lot of teams around, as you say, can't defend at the moment, but Liverpool went out and dealt with it. They went and recruited fantastically well, and the rest is history. They've won the Champions League and they've won the Premier League, and it looks like they're going to be, for many years, contending again. But, those two players now are out. They're injured. And it's going to make a big, we saw with Alisson out, they lost 7-2 against Villa.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an impact in the way that Liverpool shape up defensively. And this is the door opening for many other clubs. This is going to be the most open race that we've seen in the Premier League, I believe, for many, many years, probably, if ever. So these things happening, these injuries to Liverpool in those key positions, I think, has thrown the door open to a lot of clubs. I think City now become very good favourites, but who's to say that, Chelsea, Man United, whoever, Everton, Villa, who knows?
We've got to mention Everton as well, Glenn. We mention them pretty much in every episode because they play so well and they got a draw. Did they deserve the draw? What about this VAR with Mane? I mean, if you were a player and you put that ball through to Mane, you'd be livid, wouldn't you?
Well, this is something. This is a long discussion. It's something that world football's got to look at. And when we're talking absolute fractions, I'm not convinced that it was a offside. I don't. I think we've got to learn maybe from the cricket rule, the way cricket deals with it. They've got to back. I don't know for life why the on-field referee wasn't told by VAR to go and have a look himself.
Yeah.
And make a decision himself and put it back into the on-field referee. When it's fractions of fractions, and even the line that you see the line coming across, that actually was bigger than the actual difference of whether he was onside or offside. There's no linesman or there's no referee that can actually say that was offside. It's impossible for them to see. So I think when it goes like that, we should learn from cricket a little bit and give it back to the referee to decide whether that is such a small margin that the goal needs to stand or the offside, isn't given. And I think that's a way forward. And I think everyone in football would look at that and say, well, that's learning from another sport.
It did seem quite strange. It wasn't clear and obvious, and the goal originally stood, of course, so it would have to be clear and obvious that it was not a goal, then it was offside. And even now it's not clear and obvious, but it didn't stand. Everton got the point, and did they deserve a point? They played pretty well, I thought.
Their recruitment's been good. They've all settled down into the team very quickly. But I think Liverpool were the better team. There's different ways of gaining points in the game of football, and Everton were prepared to dig in and believe. But that lovely formula of belief, they believed they weren't out of the game. Yes, I think they had a bit of luck with the VAR decision, but the bottom line is they kept going and they kept going. But overall, I think Liverpool was a better team. Richarlison's tackle was nasty, really nasty. That looked like it would be more of an injury than Van Dijk's injury, but Thiago looks like he's going to be okay, which is good news for the lad. But no, I think Everton, have had a great start to the season. They deserve to be top of the league through the way they're playing.
Well, Everton are top and Villa are second. I haven't seen the Leicester Villa game. I know you have because you're working, and that's why you're in the car at the moment on the way back. They've won all 4 of their games so far, Villa. A late goal from Barkley, who's on loan from Chelsea, of course. Did they deserve the win? How well are they playing? They turned it around from last season, haven't they?
They certainly have. That's what's been impressive with me. Again, another team, a bit like Everton, who have recruited well. Barkley on loan coming out. Martinez, the goalkeeper, looks solid now. They look like they've got a really good base. They looked easy to play against last season. This season, easy to play against. They've got a little bit of belief. Their midfield's got a nice balance. Barkley gets a bit too much space for Leicester's point of view. just in and around the D, and he hits a smashing shot. It wasn't great today. He nearly didn't play because of an injury. He had 2 days training, but he got through the 90 minutes, and my word, he was the difference. And he drilled in 25-yarder in the bottom corner, and it was a really fabulous goal. Again, at a time where Leicester couldn't come back at them. They had no time to really put an onslaught on that Villa goal. So there was no time for them to come back, and Villa ends up getting the 3 points, and they've got a game in hand as well. Don't forget.
Yeah.
That is against Manchester City, but the way they're playing, they're ready to take on anyone.
Well, Chelsea could have done with Ross Barkley. He's on loan, as you said. They shipped 3 goals against Southampton. They 2-0 up and then 3-2 up, and unforgivingly they gave away injury time equaliser. How on earth is Frank going to sort that out? I mean, they look great going forward. They look terrible at the back.
They got some dreadful mistakes. Every mistake is being punished. I mean, Kepa, it was an awful mistake. Zuma's back pass left him short, but really, as any goalkeeper should come out and just wipe the striker out, smash the ball into the stands. And do his job, and he absolutely come out and really bottled it a little bit. I felt he was fearing for his own safety in many ways, where he should have gone through the ball and player to clear the ball, and he misses the ball completely. And it was farcical goal, really. It was hard. I was doing the match for BT, and to explain what happened, it was bizarre, because it was like watching an under-10 match with a goalkeeper coming out and missing the ball completely. But to be fair to Southampton, you always felt there was goals in them. You felt as if they could always get back in the game. Chelsea looked fantastic going forward. They're free-flowing. They've got lovely creative players. But when they haven't got the ball, there's no theory, there's no plan. There's no, from the front players to the midfield to the back players, they've really got a work to do as a team. Not just the back four, not just the goalkeeper, and the errors. They've got to cut out the errors that they're making. But I think they've got to work as a unit to win the ball back and make it very difficult at times to get through. And the distances. Chelsea are a side that you want to play against. They can play in them spells, but there's a time when they have to then just shut the door a little bit. And it's been the same last year. They haven't learnt, and they're going to let in a lot of goals, and they're going to have to score 3 or 4 to win football matches. Now, the Premier League isn't about that. Liverpool won it because they tightened up with Van Dijk coming in and Alisson, a world-class goalkeeper. That was the difference. Not really the 3 wonderful players they got up front. They were doing that anyway. But it was until they actually got a defensive unit together that they went on and won the Premier League and the Champions League. And that's what Chelsea need to look at and do, because there's 2 sides to the game.
This episode is brought to you by Rainbow Sports Group. The Rainbow Sports Group are a leading football infrastructure platform looking to discover and nurture the best young African talent. The CEO, Kingsley Pungong, is an agent, club owner, academy owner, and a huge investor in promoting African football. He sees philanthropy as part of his business model and is intent on leaving a lasting legacy for African football. For more information, visit rainbow-sports.com. You're listening to the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with Glenn, this is how to do it.
To get in touch with Glenn with a question for a future Footy Show podcast, you can email glenn@midnightuk.co.uk or send a tweet to @MidnightMix.
Let's have a quick look back to the England-Denmark game from Wednesday. Home defeat at Wembley, 1-0 for Denmark. Penalty decided it. England again coming up short when we thought things were looking good for them.
Well, yes. I mean, to beat Belgium, however you beat them, is a great result. Wales was a confident result, a good performance, and I think we should be beating up the Welsh team that they put out on the night. But then we come up against Denmark. I always felt it was going to be quite a difficult game for them, to be honest, and it was. We found it very difficult to get through the pitch, found it hard to create. I've got to say, another diabolical decision, really, refereeing decision. I've watched it so many times. I can't see a penalty really given against Walker. I really can't. And this is where referees have got to look. There was no VAR to fall back on. I thought it was a harsh decision. I really did. And quite honestly, England weren't good enough on the night, and they've got to improve, particularly defensively. Got a lot of offensive players that look good. There's a lot of choices for Gareth Southgate going forward, but we have got to get tighter. If we're going to win a tournament or go far in the tournament, we need to be a little bit like Chelsea. We need to be better defensively as a whole complete team.
You mentioned before that game how well Grealish had played for England. Were you surprised that Gareth didn't bring him on at any stage in the match to kind of open it up a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I've been in them shoes as a manager myself, and you've got your reasons, and Gareth would have his reasons. What I would say is I do believe that Jack Grealish deserves a chance. Mount's been in, Maddison's been looked at. I do believe that Jack Grealish will get more chances, but I think he really needs to be looked at. I think he's a wonderful talent. I think in an England shirt with really good players around him, I think he would flourish even more. It's almost like we've got four nice, really good little young players that play in that sort of 10 role.
Yeah.
You've got Foden, you've got Mount, you've got Maddison and Grealish could play in that situation. Now, there's only one shirt up for grabs. There's only one position up for grabs, and that's between the four of them. I think, Gareth will play with winger type, and that might be Sterling or Sancho or Rashford with Kane. So I'm thinking, that little offensive player, that little number 10-ish sort of style of player, there's a lot of youngsters all clamouring for that position. And I think Jack Grealish deserves a chance to be looked at and a little bit of consistency. He's playing well for his club. If he keeps playing well for his club, I'm sure Gareth will give him that chance.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. We'll be hearing more from Glenn in a few minutes as we look forward to the week's action coming up. European football and a big game next weekend on Saturday at Old Trafford. All that to come. But a few days ago, Glenn and I spoke to Kingsley Pungong. He's the CEO of Rainbow Sports, who look to nurture young African football talent. And we started by asking him how and when did his project start?
Rainbow Sports started in 2009 when I basically realized there was a gap in the market. I was working for Wasserman in the UK, developing an Africa business within the firm and seeing how the firm could get involved in the African market. And we realized that it was exceedingly difficult because of the lack of infrastructure. It was so difficult to find players, it was so difficult to get video footage for players. And most people found this a huge impediment in terms of entering the African market. And I took the conscious decision at the time that I was going to go back to Africa and build some kind of infrastructure that would permit me to have a pipeline that I could connect to the global ecosystem. So I went back to Cameroon and I started Rainbow FC as a small club. I started training players. And then things just grew from there, and we added several elements to it later on.
So Kingsley, what age group were you looking at, aiming at this academy?
Basically, we're looking at age from 15, and I'll tell you why 15, Glenn. In Europe, most of the academies take players from 10, but I've looked at that model from a statistical perspective, and there's a problem to it. Because in Africa, we also don't want to kill the street instinct in the player. We want them to still have the hunger and the desire and the street instinct. So we take them at 15 because we have 3 years of development and make them professional players by 18, especially with the new rules of FIFA that you really cannot transfer players under 18. So we are looking at players mainly from 15 to 18. And we have been quite successful because our success rate has been high. We have over 80% success rate for the players that we have actually secured and spent time on, who have become professional of some sort. Not all have been commercial successes in terms of being very successful commercially, but a lot have attracted significant transfer fees since we discovered them. So we think the formula works.
Yeah, so I like the idea of what you just said there, is that by leaving them to grow themselves, to actually almost coach themselves at an early age still. Don't try and, I think sometimes in Europe, and particularly in this country, these kids at 8, 9, 10 get taken on at professional clubs and they're overcoached. By the time they get to 13, 14, 15, they've done so many different drills and so many different types of training sessions that the fun of it sometimes goes out of it, and the natural side of the game. You know, I spent all my life as a kid kicking the ball against the wall. Yeah. So left and right foot, inside, outside of the foot, on both feet. And that was just because there was no structure around. And I love the fact that you've just said that's the reason why you take them a bit later, because you have to, particularly in Africa and in South America, this is what we always admire, their beautiful techniques and their touch. Well, that comes from not necessarily playing on perfect pitches. It comes from playing in the streets and on gravel pitches, and your touch improves more and more. And so I like to hear that. I think that's a great big step in the right direction of keeping the technical side of these players, because there's no doubt about it, African players and South African players, they've got very, very good techniques.
Yeah, and if you look at it, even though the game is getting faster, the game is getting stronger, there's the mental element to it. At 14, you know how tall a boy is going to be, you know how strong he's going to be mentally. He has the fundamentals on the street, and you can now add the technical part to it. I'll just quote you some examples. Ajax Amsterdam just pulled out of Cape Town in South Africa after 21 years. Feyenoord invested in Fete Academy in Ghana and spent over $5 million and pulled out after 3 years. Red Bull Salzburg spent $10 million in Ghana and closed the academy. But Red Bulls have had their biggest successes from players that they took from really small clubs in Africa and brought to Red Bull. You can see players like Sadio Mane from there, Naby Keita from Guinea, who came to Liverpool. They now have a striker from Zambia called Patson Daka, a player that Red Bull paid less than 300,000 euros for, and he's valued to that 50 million because Arsenal, United, everybody is after him. So we looked at the model carefully, and we see that the deficiency in the African athlete doesn't come from the technical. The deficiency comes from the mental, the ability to deal with the media, the ability to adjust to a professional environment, the ability to look after their bodies, the ability to assimilate information, complex information at a higher level. And that comes with leadership and education, which are the things that you provide for them between 15 and 18.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you get them later, then it becomes very difficult to have that input. So we try to get them at 15 because you can educate them better.
I think what you've said there is something that I've believed in for many years. And people ask me, about players and young players and sometimes what's the difference? It's not their ability. There are so many players, young players in Europe, in England, and certainly in Africa, in America, wherever, South America. There is a bundle of talent, actual talent to play football. But the mental side of the game is what makes that gap, that difference, that makes you that 1% that goes into the top echelons of sport. Not only football, but most sports. And it is like no other business really, other than sport, where you have to have that mental strength, that mental belief. There's a multitude of things that you have to go with it. The attitude, the dedication, all the things that you need to add to that creative spirit, that creative technique, that natural ability. And without that, simply, you will not make it as a player. And that's very important that you've identified that and gone on. Because when I put my academy together and we went to Spain, took them to Spain, they were for players a lot older. They were 18 and they'd been released. But it was the same for them. Even though they were older, we almost had to rewire their minds because they'd been told they weren't good enough. They told that they failed. And, rejection from clubs. And these were lower clubs. For the first 3 or 4 months, even at that age, it was building up the mentality side of the player, as well as the creative side and the technical side. So you're onto something really good when you're talking like you're talking. You're going to have good successes.
And for both of you guys, maybe Glenn first, when you got an academy and you got players that are 18 years old, they've already learnt their football, as you say. It's more of getting into the heads and making them a success. And for Kingsley, the same. When they come to you at 15, they're pretty much already the ready article as a footballer. It's just getting their business minds together. How does that work for you two?
I think, the way I see it is the most critical time is by the time you get them at 15, fundamentally, you know what you're getting. We know how fast they are. We know how strong they are. We know how tall they are or will be. And we have a sense of their character as people, Is this a guy who's going to run at sub-zero temperatures in Norway? Is this a guy who's going to listen to the coach? Is this a guy who's going to fit well within a team? Is this a guy who's going to cook the right food and follow the right directions of what he needs to eat? Is it a guy who's going to spend extra time in the gym? So what you basically have to do is make sure that they have not only the talent, we call it CAT, the character, the attitude, and the talent. Those are the things we look for. And we focus more on the character and the attitude after the 15th birthday. So we focus on the character, the attitude. Of course, we make sure that they get adjusted to the demands of the professional game because it's very, very demanding. There's huge competition. I tell people that sometimes football is more difficult than being maybe a neurosurgeon, because if you're a neurosurgeon, there are many opportunities for you. As a footballer, there's a limited amount of people who can play. If you have 5 top strikers at a club, maybe just 2 will play. Dealing with the competition, dealing with the rejection, fitting into different tactical formations. This is what you teach them between 15 and 18. You teach them how to be professionals.
Yeah,
train.
I understand exactly and agree with what you're saying there, Kingsley. I really do. And a lot of it was the physical side. The problem is that I've put this academy together, and these players were 18, 19 years of age. So I saw the talent was there, but some of them didn't have the mentality. Some did. We turned them into really good players, and they've played in the Premier League. From being released from Wickham or Lincoln, they weren't from the top teams in England. So it just shows you what you could do. I'll come on to something else where I feel we need in this country what we need the FA to do with the Premier League. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But for me, to 15 to 16, when I was a manager, say at Tottenham or say wherever I was a manager, there's so many players that are going into football, into the first team, and we're talking about first team players that still haven't understood the game. They're still learning on the job. That's why at 15 to 18, it is so important, one, to identify the players' talents, what you're doing, not just the natural talent on the ball, but their mentality and their strength physically, their attitudes, their dedication, their determination. But their understanding needs to come on. I've worked with first team players that, quite frankly, didn't even know how to take a throw-in properly. Didn't know where it should be thrown, where the movement should be. Simple things like that. And as a first team manager, you're still trying to teach these players that. You shouldn't be at that level. And the level should be taught at 15, 16. The understanding of the game, the position, where related to where the ball is. All them things must come from that early age of maybe 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Because when you go into the first team, it's too late. But there is so many players that I've worked with in first teams, and I see every week when I do my commentary, watching games in the Premier League, and I can see that they've not been coached and on the understanding, what I call the smelling of the game, the sense of the game. And you can teach that to a good coach can actually go through that with players at that age. And then at a young age, it stays in better than when they're older. By the time they're 19, 20, you're not going to change them. They're just learning on the job. And that's unfortunate in this profession. We need, the responsibility of good coaching and the understanding of the game and getting players in good habits is overseen sometimes, but it's vital at that age, 15 to 18, that it's in there then, and then it's there for life for the rest of their careers.
So obviously the academies are very important to you. Are there any particular countries in Africa, Kingsley, that you specialise in? Is Cameroon where one of the bases of your company is? Is that the country you really look towards?
Yeah, Cameroon is one, but it's not limited to Cameroon. We now have players signed and placed across 18 countries in Africa. So we're looking at new talent spots like Tanzania, like Kenya, looking into Congo, Niger, Guinea, Senegal. So it's quite an extensive operation, and we have trusted scouts and operatives in these countries who provide us with information. We also use technology by doing a lot of match analytics on games, on Y-Scout and other channels that we could find in terms of finding video footage. We also organize combines in different countries, in places like Zanzibar, in places like Malawi, that allows us to see the players that nobody has seen. So we try to go where people don't go to try and find what people can find. And that's the modus operandi for the moment. So it's not restricted to Cameroon. Cameroon is more like our constituency, but we go everywhere.
And you can hear part 2 of our conversation with Kingsley in episode 7 of the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show podcast, when we talk about the African youth system and whether an African country can win the World Cup.
To get in touch with Glenn with a question for a future Footy Show podcast, you can email Glenn at midnightuk.co.uk or send a tweet to @midnightmix.
Well, it's the return of the Champions League coming up this week, or as they call it in North London, the Europa League, of course. And yeah, lovely.
He says with his Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I'll have loads of fans on abusing me on that one on social media, no doubt. But Man United PSG is a really tasty game, isn't it? We were looking forward to that. They went there a couple of seasons ago and surprised PSG, but this is not a good time to be playing them, is it?
Well, no, it's the glamour tie, isn't it? It's the one that I think everyone will have their eyes across. Manchester United picked up a good win at the weekend, of course, be it 2 late goals that made the result look better perhaps than it really was. But no, United are not free-flowing yet. I don't think one result doesn't change the season for them at the moment. They're steady at the moment. There's a lot to improve on. But PSG, you know what you're going to get from there. They had their best chance to win the Champions League last year, and they stumbled.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll get a better chance. But it won't be an easy game for United. They're going to have to defend professionally, and they're going to have to defend well as a team if they're going to get anything out of the game. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a smashing tie, and it's come early in the first rounds. The first round of matches. It's great to have a game like this, and as a neutral looking in, I'm excited and inquisitive to see, who's going to come out on top.
And then on Saturday, in the evening kick-off, they played Chelsea at Old Trafford, and that's another cracking game in the Premier League for us all to look forward to. Well,
Chris, that could be anything. When you look at that on paper, with the way the Premier League is going this year, that could be 4-3. To what team, I don't know. It's the way it is at the moment in the Premier League. And again, on paper, a lovely game. So much talent on the pitch. Chelsea have got, we can criticise Chelsea defensively, but they're a great side going forward, and they've got some wonderful players. Ziyech came on from the bench. He's another one that Chelsea fans will know a little bit about, but not too much. He's a very good player, good offensive player again. You've got Havertz and Werner. They're off the mark. They'll be confident. They'll be feeling that they can score again. And obviously Manchester United, with Fernandes and Rashford and the likes, they've always got players that can create and score. Mata came on and played. He was instrumental in their win at the weekend. He might be back in the team playing against his old team. So there's a lot of subplots. But again, a smashing game, one to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for joining us here on episode 6. We'll be back next week with episode 7, looking at the Premier League action, probably looking back to the Champions League and the Europa League games as well. If you've got a question, send it in. We'll try and get some in next week. Promise we'll do our best. At Midnight Mix on Twitter if you want to send in a question for Glenn to answer.
That's all for today. See you next week.